Good evening. Welcome to the Assembly Committee on Revenue this evening. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assembly members Considine, De Silva, Flanagan, Gallant, Goulding, Gray, Hafen, Wynn, O'Neill, Roth, Chair Backus.
And I am present. And for those members that have not yet made it, I know we have a lot of stuff going on in the building today. Please mark them present as they arrive. Normally, I don't start so promptly, but we have 45 minutes that I hope we can hear two bills this evening. Just for everyone's knowledge, we are going to take these bills out of order. We will, of course, start with Assembly Bill 277, which revises provisions relating to the confidentiality of information relating to the tax on the net proceeds of minerals in the state. And so those presenters can make their way to the beginning, to the dais. And then next we will hear Assembly Bill 276, which revises provisions governing the commerce tax. Due to hopefully the limited time, we have to be back on the floor about 4:45. We're going to I would ask presentations to be kept down to a minimum of like 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll limit support, opposition, and neutral testimony. So I would ask those giving testimony tonight in support or opposition to try to bring that down to 60 seconds if you all can, but I will always be respectful of your support and opposition. With that, we will go ahead and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 277. Welcome, Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. My name is Rich DeLong. I represent Assembly District 26 in Southwest Washoe County. And Chair, I hope to keep this very short. So I'm carrying this bill on behalf of Department of Taxation, the Division of Minerals, and the mining industry. So the intent of the bill is to make sure that certain information that's provided as part of the industry's compliance with NRS 362 is public, available, and not confidential. And part of the reason for that is that the Division of Minerals is required under certain statutes to produce publications with regards to the performance of the mining industry on an annual basis. And some of those data are provided through the information that's provided to the Department of Taxation. And this is to facilitate that information transfer. So with that, I will go through the bill. So under on page 2 of the bill, section 1, subsection 2, identifies those types of data that are not confidential or privileged. And we are including on page 4 a new subsection O, disclosure of information related to the computation by the department of the gross yield and net proceeds for all minerals extracted from the state as provided under NRS 362.120. That is the extent of the bill, and I have the department here available as well as the division if there are any questions about either program or the specific information. Otherwise, I am available for questions.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember DeLong. Members, do we have any questions? We'll start with Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Does removing the taxpayer confidentiality on a single industry create a slippery slope? Does it set a precedent?
Rich DeLong for the record. I'm not aware that it will, but that might be a question for legal. There are a number of exemptions from the confidentiality provision on pages 2, 3, and 4 under the existing statute. So, but that'd be, I think, a question for legal.
What we can always do is, hold on. Okay. We'll go ahead and we can always take that offline if we can kind of follow up with legal. And I think you kind of responded that the statute where it's set forth lists specific areas where the confidentiality would not apply. And into the code.
Rich DeLong for the record. Thank you for that question, Chair. Yes, this new exemption is very specific, referring to a certain portion under NRS 362.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Assemblymember Golding.
Hi, thanks. So was there a change that required this change in order to be necessary to be compliant? Or is this a sort of a residual issue that there has been non-compliance on for a long time?
Rich DeLong for the record. Thank you very much for that question. It's a very good question because there has been a change, and tax may answer this better, but it's more of a change on their approach on what is or isn't confidential with regards to the applicability of certain data. And to just make it very clear, we've worked to bring this bill forward to ensure that those information can be made public.
And Assemblymember DeLong, I just had one more question. I know I've had the chance to talk to you offline about this bill, but from your perspective, what benefits exist for the public in the release of the net proceeds of minerals information?
Rich DeLong for the record. Thank you for the question, Chair. I think that's twofold. One is the Division of Minerals will be able to continue to produce the reports that are required under their statutes, and those will be available to the public so they can understand the performance of the mining industry as far as the types of minerals that are produced on an annual basis.
In the twofold?
The public in general will be able to see those data and provide transparency with regards to the performance of the industry in general.
Perfect. Thank you for that. With that, members, do we have any other questions for Assemblymember DeLong or maybe any of his caller friends? It doesn't look like we do. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take testimony in support of Assembly Bill 277. We'll start here in Carson City. Just make your way to the dais and go ahead and provide your support.
Good afternoon. Rob Galeri for the record, the Administrator for the Nevada Division of Minerals. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today on this bill. The Governor's Office has given me authority to testify in support of this bill. This bill really is truly a transparency bill. The Net Proceeds of Minerals Bulletin has been traditionally published every year, and recent reinterpretation of data and information has brought it back to confidentiality. For an industry such as mining that has such a unique and special tax, we feel like this data should be publicly available on an annual basis. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nikki Bailey Lundahl. I'm the Vice President of the Nevada Mining Association. The Net Proceeds of Minerals report has been available since, we believe, the 1950s, and we would like to see the report published again, so we support the bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. We are also in support of AB 277 and believe this bill provides additional transparency to the operations of one of our most vital industries in the state. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you so much. We will go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 277? We'll go to the phone lines. AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 277?
Chair, the public lines are open and working, but we have no callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. So we'll go to testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 277 here in Carson City. I don't see anyone making their way down, so we'll go up to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 277? AVH, do we have anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 277?
Chair, we have no callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. We will come to Carson City. Anyone here wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 277? We'll go to Las Vegas. Anyone there wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 277? We'll go to the phone lines. AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 277?
Chair, we have no callers to testify in neutral.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and welcome the bill sponsor back up for any closing remarks.
I just want to say thank you, committee, for hearing the bill. And Chair, I hope I met your expectations on timing.
You did. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Assemblymember DeLong. With that, we'll go ahead and close the bill hearing on. With that, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 277. We will go ahead and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 276. We'll allow a couple minutes to get over our bill sponsor the time to get to the dais, and please begin when you're ready.
The timer's going. It says 1 minute here, Chair. I don't know if I can beat Assembly member. Oh, I don't know if I can beat that, but I'll try. So with that said, thank you, Chair Backus, and my esteemed fellow members of the Revenue Committee. I am P.K. O'Neill, representing Assembly District 40. It is my pleasure to present to you today Assembly Bill 276. The bill seeks to adjust the gross revenue threshold above which businesses are subject to the commerce tax, ensuring that the threshold is indexed to inflation. By doing so, the bill aims to provide a more equitable and sustainable tax environment for businesses operating in Nevada and to protect small businesses. With me today is probably the only other member in the Assembly that was here in 2015 and is well-versed in the commerce tax, is Assembly Member Jill Dickman. And in financial support, I have Michael Nakamoto to answer some of the technical questions that you may have. If I may proceed, for some background, as you know, the commerce tax in Nevada is an annual tax imposed on business entities whose Nevada gross revenues exceed a certain threshold. Currently, this threshold is set at $4 million and was set in 2015 at that level. The tax rate varies based on the industry in which the business is primarily engaged. The existing system requires businesses to pay the commerce tax only on the portion of their revenue that exceeds the threshold and that they earned in Nevada. However, with raising inflation and economic changes, there is a need to adjust this threshold to reflect economic conditions and ensure that the tax remains fair and effective. The commerce tax was first imposed on businesses in 2015 by Senate Bill 483. The passage of the bill was hard fought and included many hours of negotiations in search of a compromise. The bill was actually intended to address needs in education, including such things as read by 3, class size reductions, teacher incentive pays, and also parental involvement, including such things as opportunity scholarships and increasing the availability and transparency and accountability in our education system. I believe the proponents of that bill never intended to put a tax burden on small business, and I know that personally because I was involved in it, and that was one of my concerns at the time, and why that small businesses should be exempt from this. But with rising inflation, that is what's happening. To prevent this, the threshold needs to be adjusted, I believe. Economic realities have changed quite a bit over the last few years, and the commerce tax should change with it. At the chair's pleasure, I will briefly provide the committee with a bill summary before discussing the conceptual amendment that further strengthens the amendment of the bill. However, first I would like to pass it to my cohort, Assembly Member Jill Dickman, for a few statements, please.
Thank you, Mr.
Assemblyman O'Neill. Good afternoon, Chair Backus and members of the committee. I'm Jill Dickman. I represent Assembly District 31, and I'm really pleased to be here to present AB 276 with Assemblyman O'Neill, and I thank you so much for taking the time to hear it. In 2015, I voted against the commerce tax, and my colleague voted for it, and we both had justifiable reasons for our positions. But one of the main reasons I was opposed to it is what I feared would happen has happened. There were promises made that small businesses would not be affected by the commerce tax, as they were captured in the modified business tax. The commerce tax was intended to capture large, high capital businesses rather than overburdening small businesses and startups. And as a small business owner myself, in entering my first session, this was a big concern for me. Unfortunately, inflation has caused many small businesses to now fall under the commerce tax threshold. I support AB 276 as it introduces a responsive mechanism to adjust the commerce tax threshold in line with economic indicators, fostering a more equitable environment for all Nevada businesses, but in particular, small businesses. So I truly hope that you'll be supportive of this common sense adjustment. Thank you.
P.K. O'Neill for the record. Assembly Bill 276 proposes fairly minor but a very important change to the commerce tax system. To achieve the goal of protecting small businesses, the bill eliminates the fixed $4 million revenue threshold and introduces a dynamic threshold that adjusts annually based on the Consumer Price Inflation Index, which means the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers of the Western region on all items. Specifically, Section 4A of the bill sets the calculation for the taxable year beginning on July 1st, 2025. As such, the threshold will be $4 million, plus the product of $4 million times a percentage determined by the average 12-month percentage increase in the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, Western region, over the preceding 3 calendar years. In subsequent years, the threshold will increase in accordance with inflation. Businesses with Nevada gross revenues exceeding this threshold must pay or must file a return and pay the commerce tax on the amount that exceeds the threshold, the revenue threshold. Those whose gross revenue is equal to or below the threshold remains exempt from any filings. The bill also makes conforming changes to ensure that the commerce tax calculation reflects the new revenue threshold. But I would like to emphasize that none of the industry tax rates are changing. This is a change to the revenue threshold only. In my proposed amendment that you should have and should be on Nellis, as indicated, I would now like to discuss my proposed amendment. In Section 4, I want to add language requiring the Department of Taxation to round each annual calculation required pursuant to this section to the nearest $100,000. In Section 4, subsection 2, I want to clarify that the initial calculation for fiscal year 2026 be calculated and published on the department's website within 30 days of the effective date of the bill, but for fiscal year 2027 and all future fiscal years, the calculation should be calculated and published no later than March 1st as required by this subsection. Finally, I want to add a new section amending NRS 363C.620, which specifies when interest is allowed or disallowed on overpayment of commerce tax to the Department of Taxation, to specify that the payment of interest will not be allowed by the department on overpayments of the tax caused by the taxpayer using the incorrect exemption threshold on the tax return. I'm ready for actually, I should say we are ready for questions now. Chair.
We do have a few questions. We will go ahead and start with Assemblymember Hafen.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Assemblyman O'Neill and Assemblywoman Dickman. First, I appreciate you bringing the bill forward because I do think that it is important to adjust for inflation. I want to touch a little bit on some of the programs that you stated were part of the overall plan for these funds to be used for. I think you mentioned some school choice, Zoom and ELL, but you also, I believe, stated what's now called Opportunity Scholarship. Is that correct?
PK O'Neill, for the record, that is correct, sir.
Okay. Sounds good. Madam Chair, I'll hold off the rest of my questions for after everybody else is done. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go ahead next to Assemblymember Roth.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the presentation. Do we have an idea of how many businesses are going to fall under this, or how many are currently under that $4 million threshold now?
Thank you for asking that question. Yes, we do, at different levels of what inflation would be. And I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Nakamoto to answer that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I am Michael Nakamoto. I serve as Chief Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst and unofficial phone a friend from the Fiscal Analysis Division. Assemblymember O'Neill, in the preparation of this bill, asked me to do some analysis, and so I'm here to answer questions related to that. So what I can tell you right now, hopefully this will answer your question and give a little bit more information, Assemblymember Roth. In FY 2024, based on information we received from the Department of Taxation, there were 8,226 taxpayers for the commerce tax that paid approximately $341.1 million during FY 24. So based on the calculation that would be required under this bill, the average 3-year inflation for calendar years 22, 23, and 24 would be 5%. And based on the calculations in the bill with the proposed amendment, that would make the exemption amount, it would increase it from $4 million to $4.2 million. And there are a couple of things that are going on with that. Is the first thing that would happen is the number of taxpayers would decrease from 8,226 to 8,045. There would be a net reduction of 145 taxpayers based on that FY 2024 data. So those taxpayers would now have no liability. But then the remaining taxpayers, the 8,045, would also have a reduction in their liability because instead of, under the commerce tax right now, the Nevada gross revenue is calculated and you're required to pay the tax based on anything above the $4 million threshold. Under Assemblymember O'Neill's bill, that the tax would be due only on the amount above the exemption threshold. So for in this case, it would be the $4.2 million. The net revenue reduction based on the FY 2024 data would have been just under $1.6 million. And that's the combination of the taxpayers who were previously required to pay and now not required to pay, as well as all other taxpayers paying on $200,000 less of Nevada gross revenue. And I hope that answered your question. And if it did not, maybe I can clarify. Thank you.
Thank you. That did answer my question. As a follow-up, do we have an idea of how large those businesses are? I guess what I'm trying to get at is, like, we're trying to capture large capital businesses, and $4 million still seems like a pretty large capital business. And so do we know if with inflation we're actually bringing in smaller businesses at this point? Do we have an idea of what those businesses look like?
Not specifically, no, but the commerce tax was set up to somewhat level the playing field of labor-intensive businesses versus capital-intensive businesses. And it included the state. The percentage of what each business pays is based upon their contribution to our state GP. GDP. Yes, GDP. Thank you. So it's difficult to say, but I can say it was trucking. It can be, even mining. The gaming industry will be paying on it. manufacturing businesses, but law firms, which are more of capital intensive, can pay on it if their revenue exceeds either now the 4 million or the new numbers if we pass the bill that weren't originally intended. A small law office, and you may know this from your own profession, Assemblymember Roth, that their prices have gone up, their fees have gone up, and can now be, I hate to use the word sucked in, but brought into that. And so we originally, in the negotiations that this occurred, I look at it this way. We made a promise to businesses that were earning less under that 4 million at 2015 dollars that they would not be included, they would not be concerned with this action. Inflation has addressed some of that. Prices have gone up overall, the fees, and now they're being brought in. And so I look at it very simply as we made a promise made is a promise kept, which is said very often around here, and is something that we should consider. And I think Assemblywoman Dickman may also have a comment too.
If I may, just quickly, Jill Dickman for the record. We have to keep in mind, this is a gross receipts tax. This is not on their net profits. And so prices are going up for people's net, but their costs are also going up. Or I mean, not their gross is going up, but their costs are going up, so their net is getting smaller. But this doesn't apply to their net. This is just on their gross. So, you know, inflation has definitely caused it. I mean, at the 5% that we're talking about, there's 181 smaller businesses that would not be captured under this if we pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will go to Assemblymember Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know, I was for this, but then you talked about like taxing law firms. That makes it hard for me to be for this now. Sorry.
I was going to say, they're already included within the tax in the revenues if they exceed the 4 million.
Yeah.
Not for the services, but they may receive benefits from other ways, if I'm not mistaken on it.
So can I just ask, because the commerce tax has sort of been like a bone of contention ever since I decided to run for office and I wasn't even around. So I got to pay for the sins of my colleagues, yes. And so my question is there a reason, this seems, I know something's better than nothing, but did you guys look into doing something maybe a little bit more aggressive? Because I know it makes a difference to like those 100 and some odd businesses, but I'm glad that you pointed that out. It's about gross. It's not their net. And so what it costs to run a business versus, you know, what kind of revenue you're bringing in it can be very different from business to business. I don't know, maybe I'm just like looking at net instead of gross. What about, what a thought.
If I may, Jill Dickman for the record. The good thing about this bill is that yes, wouldn't it be nice to make it $5 million instead of $4 million? But, you know, baby steps. But also, this will, at least now with this new formula, keep up with inflation. So.
And if I may add, PK O'Neill for the record. In 2015, the negotiations took several months with several of the industries bringing in their various parts to it. Yes, it would be nice, actually, if I had my way, I'd like to actually take the tax out, but it has become a part of our budget. And I actually have spoken, there were a couple people, CPA here in town, who worked aggressively against my reelection campaign. And when I spoke to him during the summer about this, he actually made comments about, you know, at the end of the day, and seeing this tax, it's a fairly fair tax when you look at capital-intensive versus labor-intensive industries, which are more of our economy is based on with the resort associations, gaming, et cetera, that have high labor, and we're paying the modified business tax. 50% of what a company pays with the commerce tax, they can reduce their modified business tax. So that's where some of the balance. So yeah, there's probably numerous ways to skin the cat. I try to pick a simple, succinct way that would actually be good moving forward. And in future sessions, we can address that and other taxation issues on reductions if necessary.
Thank you so much. And we will go to Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you, Chair. So I totally understand what you're doing, but in reading on page 2, section 4, 1B2, so when there is deflation, when the CPI goes down, what it says here is the threshold doesn't go down. It just stays the same as the previous year. So in downturns, if that's multiple years, then that threshold is always just going to be what it was the year before, no matter how far it goes down. So was there any contemplation about a decrease in these, in this threshold when there's a CPI? Because the way I read this right now, it just stays the same as the previous year, the previous year, the previous year, even if the CPI goes down.
And I appreciate that. Thank you. And we discussed that, and I think the best person to answer that actually would be Mr. Nakamoto when he explained it to me why we would not do that, or why I was not recommending that in the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, Michael Nakamoto for the record. Madam Vice Chair, in response to your question, I don't know if I can give you anything other than first, I guess my observation would be that if we have 3 years where the average rate of inflation was negative, we have bigger problems to deal with than that. But this is ultimately a policy decision for the legislature to make, and that's, I believe, what I told Assemblymember O'Neill, that you could, in theory, do that. You could create a mechanism by which it would decrease. There are other considerations that would go into that, such as, and I'd have to check with Mr. Fernley as to whether that would require a 2/3 on the bill or not. But that is ultimately a decision for this for the legislature to make, that you could do that as a way in the event of a severe economic event that caused deflation for a period of multiple years, to actually have that decrease. But again, that is a policy decision, I believe, for you.
Okay, thank you for responding to our questions. With that, we're going to go ahead and now open the hearing for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 276. So those that have testimony in support, if you can start making your way in Carson City and go ahead and light up those buttons quickly. For everyone's knowledge, it's currently 4:34, and the members on this committee have to be down to the floor at 4:45.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, committee members, my name is Ron Knecht. I'm actually a paid lobbyist, but not for this, in a different context. I had the pleasure of occupying Assembly Member O'Neill's seat 22 years ago, and he's doing a much better job than I ever did, as evidenced by his bringing this bill and his presentation here today. When I was in the Assembly, there was a story I heard about a new member from rural Nevada, and as so many rural folks are, he was fairly quiet. In fact, he didn't say a thing. Finally, late in the session one day, there was debate on the floor about a bill, and he rose to speak. And everyone was waiting to hear what words of wisdom would come from him. And he said, "It's a good bill." And he sat down. My testimony is going to be about that long. It's a good bill. And I'll just say two things. One, it's all about fairness, as Assemblyman O'Neill explained, and Assemblywoman Dickman. And two, to Assemblymember Considine's question, which is a very thoughtful and very good one, we are not, in this bill, you will not be essentially accounting for the inflation of the last 10 years. You start from where the threshold is, and you go up year by year from there. So in order to get back to where things stood when this bill was passed, or when the Senate bill was passed, you'd have to have a long time. As Mr. Nakamoto suggested, you'd have to have a long time of negative inflation. And we haven't ever had that, at least in my lifetime, which basically goes back to the fall of Rome. But I think if you got to that state, you could take care of that. But the essence is, this bill is all about fairness. And Madam Chair, I hope I didn't go over 16 seconds.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Paul Enos. I'm the CEO of the Nevada Trucking Association, and we are an industry that does deal with inflation. Fuel surcharges is one of the ways that we try to pass some of that cost onto our customer. That does come under your gross receipts. So when you have incidents like we've had in the last few years, when you have a huge spike in fuel prices, you have the potential to bring in some of those trucking companies that are 10 to 12 trucks because of that fuel surcharge. So we do think that this is a very thoughtful measure by Assembly Members Dickman and O'Neill, and appreciate them bringing it forward and are in full support. Thank you.
And when you guys are done, you may want to step aside because other people are coming forward.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Andrew McKay. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Franchised Auto Dealers Association. I'll keep my remarks very brief, per your instructions earlier, Madam Chair. Simply put, our industry is an extremely high volume and low margin business. Average margin historically for new car dealers is just about 2.5%, excuse me. It ebbs and flows. However, it's important to note that with respect to that margin, the majority of our gross receipts are generated in new sales when there's literally virtually no margin at all in those sales. So with respect to the bill and what it contemplates as we move forward as prices continue to get more expensive, particularly from our manufacturer partners for a litany of reasons. I don't want to get into that. This will help us at least smooth that curve out. So for that, Madam Chair, thanks for your time, and thank you to the committee.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. We are also in support of AB 276, as the current rate of $4 million of gross revenues was originally established in 2015 by this body, and since that time, the cost of goods, labor, and services have, of course, significantly increased without an adjustment to that threshold. We believe this bill would be helpful to small businesses and that this annual adjustment is appropriate. Thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. For the record, Trey Abney, representing the small business owners of NFIB Nevada. I will give a me too to all the folks that came up before us. The cliche we always use is if you've met one small business, you've met one small business. And I'll tell you, it doesn't take too many small business locations or restaurant locations to get to $4 million in gross receipts. And so we appreciate the idea here to increase that over the last 10 years. Is a lot different a decade later. I want to thank Assembly Members O'Neill and Dickman for this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Terry Graves, representing the Nevada Manufacturing Association. Like the previous testifiers, manufacturing has many small businesses that this measure will benefit. If you recall, after the pandemic, we had supply chain issues with a lot of very important products for the country. It is still an issue in this country, and part of that is to repatriate some of the key manufacturing processes that we need back in this country and not being supplied by foreign or sometimes hostile foreign sources. So we fully support the efforts of Mr. Assemblymember O'Neill, and we'll support the bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Stacy Woodbury. I am a paid lobbyist, but I'm here in a volunteer capacity as a member of the board and immediate past chair of the Carson City Chamber of Commerce on behalf of our 650 members, many of whom are small businesses. We support this bill and ask for your support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Jim DeGraffenreid, JIMDEGRAFFENREID. I'm Nevada's Republican National Committee man, here today in support of AB 276 on behalf of the Nevada Republican Party. Our party platform states that we support lower taxes and fees and a reduction in the scope of government at all levels. It also states that we support a simple and fair tax code. Nevada was long known as a business-friendly state due to our lack of personal and business income taxes. In fact, for many years, we proudly proclaimed on the signs welcoming travelers to a debt-free state that we had no income tax, no sales tax, no inheritance tax, no corporations tax, no gift tax. While Nevada is maybe not as business-friendly as we once were, and it's unrealistic to think that we're going to repeal the commerce tax, AB 276 aims to preserve the intent of the commerce tax law by adjusting the threshold above which businesses must pay the commerce tax based on the rate of inflation. Without this adjustment, every year more Nevada businesses will be required to pay the commerce tax as their revenues increase, not because their businesses are actually growing in real terms. It's a fair and common sense solution that maintains the threshold in real dollar terms at the business size the legislature originally determined, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. John Leleu, LELEU, here on behalf of NAOP Commercial Development Association. Me too. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Becky Dutro, representing Nevada Taxpayers Association. We'd like to recognize that this bill was written to align with the guiding principles that should be used when evaluating good tax policy. The commerce tax is a stable and equitable tax, and the new calculation formula being introduced is simple and easy to understand. Additionally, these proposed changes do not significantly change the current tax base, but do recognize and adjust to economic factors such as inflation without continually having to bring back to future sessions to adjust. Thank you.
Okay, what my members don't want to hear right now. It's currently 4:43 and revenue members have to go to the floor. So we're going to have to take a recess, and I know we're in the midst of Assembly Bill 277, but when we come back, we will go to Las Vegas for support testimony and then move through and finish up the bill hearing on Assembly Bill 277. So with that, we're going to be in recess for a little bit. We will go ahead and call the Assembly Committee on Revenue back to order. And I believe when we left off on the hearing for Assembly Bill 277, I knew it, sorry. I said that wrong incorrectly earlier, but 276 is where we left off. We were going to move to Las Vegas for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 276. We did have someone there and they didn't know whether they were here for anything. So with that, we'll go to the phone lines. AVH, do we have anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 276?
Chair, the public lines are open and working, but we have no callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much, AVH. We will go to Carson City and we will take testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 276. There's no one in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone on the phone line wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 276?
Chair, there are no callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. We will move to testimony in neutral here in Carson City to Assembly Bill 276. Come on down.
Thank you, Chairwoman or Chair Member Backus and committee members. My name is Wiz Rosar, Deputy State Director with American for Prosperity here in Nevada, and it was a challenging approach to this bill, I will say, because we know that the intent is strong and what they're trying to achieve. As an organization, we strive to create an economy that works for everyone by empowering people and businesses to earn success and realize their potential. And Nevada's Commerce Tax does not help people and businesses. In fact, the tax only imposes higher costs and prices on Nevada companies and consumers. I do want to stress that even if the threshold for the tax were to be increased, smaller businesses would still be impacted by the tax. This is because many small and medium-sized businesses buy equipment, materials, or other goods and services from larger corporations and companies that would still be subject to the commerce tax, who would then pass the cost on to other companies and ultimately to consumers. Additionally, since Nevada's commerce tax has different tax rates for businesses in different industries, some companies pay substantially higher taxes than others, even if revenue is similar. This is not impartial and neutral tax policies and increases the cost and price of goods, some goods much more than others. Instead of indexing the threshold to inflation, Nevada should work to eliminate the commerce tax. This should ideally be to achieved through corresponding spending cuts to reduce the oversize of government, yet the commerce tax is so distortionary that even eliminating commerce tax by increasing the sales tax rate or base will be preferable to the status quo. Nevada sales tax is only assessed at the point of final sale, while the commerce tax is assessed at every stage of production and leads to even higher prices. So AB 276 correctly identifies the commerce tax as a harmful tax on businesses and ultimately consumers, and the commerce tax is more so harmful for all businesses. And we think here from a principle standpoint that we want to ensure that Nevada remains business friendly, and we think that the commerce tax, as some had said earlier, and in its initial proposals was very contentious, and using mechanisms like this to continuously create carve-outs isn't going to help address the bigger issues, and that's creating certainty and consistency across the board for all businesses and all Nevadans to ensure that we're all contributing towards the function of government. Thank you, and we urge you to reconsider the bill with the bill stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. I think technically that's opposition, but we'll let it slide. With that, doesn't appear to be anyone in Las Vegas. AVH, has anyone joined on the phone lines to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 276?
Chair, we have no callers to testify in neutral.
Thank you. With that, I will go ahead and invite our bill sponsors back up to the dais to give any closing remarks.
BK O'Neill for the record. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come back up. I have some additional information. during our short recess, I was able to determine that the last time we had a negative inflation was in 2009, and it was 0.4%. The years preceding and post were all positive inflation numbers. So when we look at the question by Assemblymember Constein on, since the average is 3 years, we haven't had a 3-year straight or even 2-year straight negative inflation. That was part of the reasoning that we had and stayed the way it is. And as Mr. Nakamoto said very succinctly, if we have 3 years of negative inflation, we have more serious issues to deal with. So with that, I appreciate all the comments made today and the questions, and even the Americans for Prosperity's opposition to this bill. Yes, I would love to see taxes be reduced across the line, done away with, but it's government. We have to provide services, and it's a necessary action that we must take and be willing to do for our good of the country as a whole in the state. So I thank you. I would appreciate your support on this bill. And with that, I'll have Ms. Dickman.
Thank you so much for taking, Jill Dickman for the record, for taking the time to hear this bill. I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, but the worst case scenario, it sounds like would be $1.5 million loss in revenue to the state, which is kind of, they call it budget dust, but it would make a huge difference to the survival of many small businesses. And so anyway, I really appreciate you listening to all this. Would I personally rather see the commerce tax gone? Yes, I would, because I think a gross receipts tax is not good. But we have this tax, we need the revenue, and so I hope that we will just do this common sense adjustment. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We can go ahead and now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 276. We can move to our last item on our agenda, which is public comment. We'll start here in Carson City. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to give public comment this evening? We'll go ahead up to Las Vegas. I don't see anyone joining us up there this evening, so we'll go to the phone lines. Is there anyone on the phone lines, ABH, wishing to give public comment this evening?
Chair, we have no callers to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We can go ahead and close the hearing this evening.